The term Dark Enlightenment refers to a loosely defined intellectual movement that emerged in the early 21st century. It is characterized by a combination of anti-democratic, anti-egalitarian, and anti-modernist ideas. The Dark Enlightenment rejects many principles associated with the Enlightenment period, such as individual rights, democratic governance, and social progress. Movement emerges from a dissatisfaction with the current social, political, and cultural systems and seeks alternative frameworks that align with their beliefs and values. Adherents of the Dark Enlightenment perceive flaws and shortcomings in democracy, egalitarianism, and modernity, and they advocate for different approaches to governance, social order, and cultural preservation. The movement represents a response to what its proponents view as the negative consequences of certain aspects of modern society, such as perceived erosion of traditional values, social fragmentation, and what they see as misguided attempts to achieve equality and justice. They seek alternatives that prioritize stability, hierarchy, individual excellence, and the preservation of cultural identity. It's worth noting that the Dark Enlightenment encompasses a diverse range of perspectives, and not all adherents share the same views or propose the same solutions. The movement is shaped by various influences, interpretations, and critiques of contemporary society. Adherents of the Dark Enlightenment, often referred to as the neo-reactionaries or NRX, argue for a return to traditional social hierarchies and authority structures. The Dark Enlightenment draws inspiration from a range of thinkers, including Friedrich Nietzsche, Julius Evola, and Oswald Spengler, who were critical of modernity and sought to revive traditional values and social structures. While there is no centralized organization or uniform ideology associated with the movement, online communities and blogs have served as platforms for discussing and promoting Dark Enlightenment ideas. It is important to note that the Dark Enlightenment has been subject to criticism and controversy. Critics argue that its rejection of democratic values and embrace of authoritarianism can lead to the suppression of individual freedoms and human rights. Furthermore, some of its proponents have been associated with far-right ideologies and have expressed xenophobic or racist views, although not all adherents necessarily share these extreme positions. The anti-democratic aspect of the Dark Enlightenment stems from the belief that democracy, as a political system, is inherently flawed and unsustainable. Adherents argue that democracy leads to the erosion of traditional values, the rise of populism, and the tyranny of the majority. They see it as a system that promotes short-term thinking, pandering to popular opinion, and the pursuit of self-interest at the expense of long-term stability and the common good. One of the main criticisms put forward by the Dark Enlightenment is that democracy tends to prioritize the desires and preferences of the masses over the expertise and wisdom of a select few. They argue that this results in policies that cater to immediate gratification and emotional impulses rather than rational decision-making. Furthermore, they contend that the masses, being prone to manipulation and easily swayed by demagogues, can make uninformed or misguided choices that have detrimental consequences for society as a whole. Adherents of the Dark Enlightenment often propose alternative forms of governance that they believe would be more effective and stable than democracy. These alternatives can include authoritarian rule, technocracy, rule by experts, or even monarchism. They argue that such systems allow for stronger leadership, more decisive decision-making, and the preservation of traditional values and social hierarchies. The anti-egalitarian aspect of the Dark Enlightenment refers to its rejection of the principle of egalitarianism, which advocates for equality of opportunity and outcomes among individuals in society. Adherents of the Dark Enlightenment argue that egalitarianism is an unattainable and undesirable goal. They contend that human beings are inherently unequal in terms of their abilities, talents, and potential, and that attempts to enforce equal outcomes through social and economic policies are futile and counterproductive. They believe that a natural hierarchy exists among individuals, with some being inherently superior or more deserving than others. the Dark Enlightenment challenges the notion that all individuals should have equal access to resources, opportunities, and social privileges. They argue that such policies undermine competition, meritocracy, and individual liberty. Instead, they advocate for a society that embraces and celebrates natural inequalities, where individuals are rewarded based on their inherent abilities and contributions. Furthermore, the Dark Enlightenment often rejects the idea of social justice, which seeks to address historical and systemic inequalities. Adherents argue that efforts to rectify historical injustices through affirmative action, wealth redistribution, or other means are misguided and interfere with the natural order of society. They view such measures as attempts to impose an artificial and egalitarian ideal that goes against the natural hierarchy they believe exists. The anti-modernist ideas within the Dark Enlightenment refer to a rejection of many aspects of modernity, including its values, cultural developments, and technological advancements. Adherents of the Dark Enlightenment often view modernity as a period marked by moral decay, cultural decline, and the erosion of traditional values and institutions. They argue that modern society has lost touch with its roots, leading to a loss of identity, social cohesion, and a sense of purpose. They believe that many of the social, cultural, and technological changes associated with modernity have had negative consequences for individuals and society as a whole. One aspect of anti-modernist thinking within the Dark Enlightenment is a critique of consumerism and materialism. Adherents argue that modern society places excessive emphasis on material possessions and superficial pursuits, leading to a shallow and spiritually empty existence. They advocate for a return to simpler and more meaningful lifestyles that prioritize inner values and personal growth over external wealth and material consumption. Additionally, the Dark Enlightenment often expresses skepticism or rejection of technological progress. Adherents believe that advancements in technology, such as automation, artificial intelligence, and genetic engineering, can have profound and potentially negative effects on society. They are concerned about the erosion of human agency, loss of traditional skills and craftsmanship, and the potential for dystopian outcomes in an increasingly technologically driven world. Critics of the anti-modernist ideas within the Dark Enlightenment argue that they can hinder progress, innovation, and societal advancements. They believe that embracing the positive aspects of modernity, such as scientific discoveries, human rights advancements, and technological innovations, can lead to improved living conditions, increased well-being, and a better future for humanity. The opposition to feminism within the Dark Enlightenment stems from a variety of factors, including traditionalist views on gender roles, skepticism of social justice movements, and a belief in innate gender differences. Adherents of the Dark Enlightenment often hold conservative or traditionalist beliefs regarding gender roles and relationships. They argue that feminism, as a social and political movement, undermines traditional family structures and promotes gender equality to the detriment of societal stability. They view the push for gender equality as a threat to traditional gender roles, which they believe are rooted in natural differences between men and women. Moreover, some within the Dark Enlightenment question the necessity or validity of feminist objectives and claim that the movement has achieved its goals, making further activism unnecessary. They argue that feminism, particularly contemporary or third-wave feminism, has deviated from its original goals of securing equal rights for women and has become more focused on issues they perceive as divisive or unnecessary. Critics of feminism within the Dark Enlightenment often contend that efforts to address gender disparities have gone too far, resulting in what they see as an imbalance in favor of women and the marginalization of men. They argue against initiatives such as affirmative action or gender quotas, believing that such policies can discriminate against men and undermine meritocracy. Within the Dark Enlightenment, opposition to multiculturalism and social justice is often rooted in concerns about the erosion of societal cohesion, cultural preservation, and skepticism of social engineering. Multiculturalism, as an ideology that promotes the coexistence of multiple cultural groups within a society, is often critiqued by adherents of the Dark Enlightenment. They argue that multiculturalism can lead to social fragmentation, conflicts between cultural groups, and the dilution or loss of traditional values and cultural identities. They contend that a strong societal identity based on shared values and cultural cohesion is essential for social stability and harmony. Furthermore, proponents of the Dark Enlightenment often express skepticism towards the concept of social justice, particularly in its contemporary manifestations. They question the effectiveness and fairness of social justice movements and policies, which aim to address systemic inequalities and promote equal opportunities for marginalized groups. They argue that these efforts can lead to the imposition of an ideological agenda, suppression of dissenting views, and an unfair redistribution of resources. Adherents of the Dark Enlightenment often advocate for individualism and meritocracy, emphasizing personal responsibility and individual achievement rather than collective or group-based considerations. They argue that social justice initiatives, such as affirmative action or identity-based quotas, can undermine these principles by prioritizing group identity over individual merit. Critics of the opposition to multiculturalism and social justice within the Dark Enlightenment argue that it can perpetuate exclusion, discrimination, and unequal treatment of marginalized groups. They advocate for fostering inclusive societies that respect and celebrate diversity, acknowledging the historical injustices that certain groups have faced and working towards a more equitable distribution of resources and opportunities. It's important to note that while opposition to multiculturalism and social justice exists within the Dark Enlightenment, it does not mean that all adherents share the same views or hold extreme positions. There can be a spectrum of perspectives within the movement, ranging from mild skepticism to outright rejection. Friedrich Nietzsche, Julius Evola, and Oswald Spengler are among the thinkers who have influenced the Dark Enlightenment movement. While their ideas are diverse, they share certain themes and critiques that resonate with some adherents of the Dark Enlightenment. Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche was a German philosopher known for his critiques of traditional morality, Christianity, and the concept of egalitarianism. His ideas of the will to power and the Übermensch, superior individual, have resonated with some proponents of the Dark Enlightenment. They draw on Nietzsche's critique of herd mentality, his emphasis on individual excellence, and his belief in the existence of natural hierarchies. Julius Evola. Evola was an Italian philosopher and writer who critiqued modernity and embraced traditionalism. He rejected democracy, liberalism, and egalitarianism, advocating for a return to hierarchical social orders. Evola's works, such as Revolt Against the Modern World and Ride the Tiger, have influenced some adherents of the Dark Enlightenment, who find resonance in his rejection of modern values and his call for a restoration of traditional social structures. Oswald Spengler. Spengler was a German historian and philosopher who wrote The Decline of the West. He argued that civilizations go through life cycles and that Western civilization was in a state of decline. Spengler's ideas about the cyclical nature of history, the rise and fall of civilizations, and the erosion of cultural vitality have found traction within the Dark Enlightenment. They draw on his pessimistic view of modernity and his belief in the inevitable decay of Western societies. It's important to note that while these thinkers have influenced the Dark Enlightenment movement, not all adherents necessarily embrace all aspects of their ideas. The movement is characterized by a diverse range of perspectives, and individuals within it may selectively draw on different thinkers and concepts to shape their own beliefs. Adherents of the Dark Enlightenment often criticize democracy and propose alternative forms of governance, such as monarchy or authoritarian rule, as potential alternatives. Here's an explanation of what these alternatives entail within the context of the Dark Enlightenment. Monarchy. Monarchy refers to a form of government where a single individual, usually a hereditary monarch, holds supreme power and authority. Proponents of monarchy argue that it provides stability, continuity, and clear lines of authority, as power is concentrated in the hands of one ruler. They believe that a monarch, possessing wisdom and a sense of duty, can make decisive decisions without being swayed by short-term populist pressures or party politics. Adherents of the Dark Enlightenment often see monarchy as a system that upholds traditional values and social hierarchies. They contend that hereditary rule allows for the passing down of wisdom, knowledge, and cultural heritage from one generation to the next, preserving a sense of identity and stability. They view a monarch as a figure who embodies the nation and safeguards its interests against perceived threats from democracy, egalitarianism, and social upheaval. Authoritarian rule. Authoritarian rule refers to a form of government where power is concentrated in the hands of a single leader or a small group, with limited checks and balances and minimal political freedoms. Adherents of the Dark Enlightenment may advocate for authoritarian rule as an alternative to democracy, which they perceive as weak, inefficient, and susceptible to manipulation. Proponents of authoritarian rule argue that a strong leader can make swift and decisive decisions, maintaining order and social cohesion. They prioritize efficiency and stability over individual freedoms and often view democracy as prone to corruption, gridlock, and the manipulation of public opinion. They believe that an authoritarian government can provide clear direction and enforce policies that align with their preferred social order and cultural values. It's important to note that these alternative forms of governance proposed within the Dark Enlightenment have their own potential drawbacks and criticisms. Monarchy can be seen as perpetuating inequality and limiting individual freedoms, while authoritarian rule can suppress dissent and violate human rights. These alternative systems often raise concerns about accountability, representation, and the potential for abuse of power. Different societies have different preferences for governance, and the merits and drawbacks of various systems remain subjects of ongoing debate.